Disappear in silence, and you'll echo louder than those who scream. That's the truth, my friends. Most people think power is in shouting, in proving, in making noise. But the real impact, it's felt when you step back, when you vanish without a single warning. That's when the world suddenly starts paying attention. Strange, isn't it? The moment you stop knocking at doors, people inside suddenly wonder why it got so quiet. Before we dive deep, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, what you're about to hear might just flip the way you look at relationships, self-worth, and silence forever. Stay with me until the end, because this video could be the turning point you didn't know you needed. Now, hey folks, picture this. Imagine there's a street performer playing the same song every single day outside your window. At first, it's nice background music. You hum along, you even tap your foot. But over time, you stop noticing it. It just blends into the noise of life. Then one morning, silence. No guitar, no singing, no sound at all. Suddenly, you lean out the window wondering, wait, where did they go? That's how presence works. When it's always there, it becomes invisible. When it disappears, it becomes unforgettable. And here's the lie we've all been told. If you want someone to notice you, give them more, be louder, show up more, do extra. Wrong. Folks, let me break it for you. Overexposure kills value. Think of salt. Too much of it, and the whole dish is ruined. Same goes for you. Too much access, and suddenly you're not special anymore. My friends, we live in a world where everyone is fighting to be seen, posting, calling, explaining, chasing, overreacting. But do you know what people truly remember? It's not the one who begged for their attention. It's the one who disappeared without saying a word. As Marcus Aurelius once said, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. When you disappear, you're no longer trying to control them. You're taking back control of yourself. And that, right there, is power. Here's the fun part. People will pretend they don't notice your absence. They'll post extra selfies, laugh louder, show off like they're the happiest they've ever been. But inside, they're scrambling. It's like when you misplace your phone for just 5 minutes. At first, you act calm. It's fine, I'll find it. But then the panic creeps in. You retrace every step, tear apart the couch cushions, check the fridge, even though you know it's not there. That's what your silence does to someone who thought they had you on demand. It turns calmness into chaos. And you don't need to lift a finger. No games, no shouting matches, no dramatic exits. Just silence, just absence. That's why I call it the loudest sound you'll ever make. Because while noise fades, silence lingers. It echoes in their head, forcing them to replay every conversation, every moment, every choice that led you to step back. The biggest lie people believe is that disappearing means losing. No, my friends, disappearing with dignity means you've already won. You've won peace, clarity, and most importantly, self-respect. You've stopped proving your worth to people who never deserved your energy in the first place. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take this moment as a reminder that your absence can be your greatest presence. You don't need to be everywhere to be remembered. Sometimes the most powerful move is stepping back, letting silence speak for you. Say this with me. I choose silence. Write it down in the comments. Affirm it. Let it sink in. Because when you choose silence, you're choosing strength. You're choosing peace. You're choosing you. And before we continue deeper into this journey, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Stay with me, my friends, because what comes next will show you exactly how to disappear, not out of weakness but out of power, and why the more you disappear, the more they want you. I choose silence. Write it, claim it, live it. Number 1, the paradox of presence. What is always available is rarely respected. Let that sink in, my friends. People don't value what they see every single day, what they can reach at any moment, what's always waiting for them. It's human nature. When something is guaranteed, it loses its shine. And that's the paradox. You thought being present, always showing up, always giving, would make them appreciate you more. But in truth, it makes them see you as ordinary, as background, as part of the wallpaper of their life. Think about it like this. Imagine a clock on your wall. It's always there, ticking, working, reminding you of the time. Useful, reliable, but invisible. You pass by it 100 times a day, and it barely crosses your mind. But the moment that clock stops working, the silence is deafening. Suddenly you notice it. Suddenly you miss the sound you never thought twice about. That's how your constant presence works. As long as you were always there, always giving, they never had to stop and wonder about you. But the second you pull away, something shifts. And let me ask you, haven't you felt that fear deep down? The fear that if you stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up, they'll forget you. That if you step back, they'll replace you. That fear, my friends, is the very chain that keeps people stuck in unhealthy cycles of overgiving. But here's the truth. It's not your absence that makes you forgettable. It's your predictability. When you're too available, too present, you become ordinary. Predictability kills attraction. It's like going to a buffet where the food never runs out. At first you're excited, you pile up your plate. But after a while, the endless abundance makes everything taste bland. Nothing feels special when it's always guaranteed. That's what happens when you offer your time, your energy, your love without boundaries. It loses its flavor, and then you wonder why they don't value it. It's not because you're not enough. It's because you gave too much without ever stepping back to let them miss the taste. They might laugh, pretend they don't notice when you disappear, but inside, they're unsettled because people may take you for granted, but deep in their core, they crave mystery, scarcity, unpredictability. They crave the tension of not knowing if you'll still be there tomorrow, and when you step back, even silently, you shake their sense of control. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. The problem is, most of us flip this. We hand over our power, thinking that if we just stay present, if we just give more, we'll secure their love. But that's a lie. It's not love you secure that way, it's entitlement. They don't admire you for always being there. They expect it, and expectation is the enemy of desire. Now, I know this isn't easy. Some of you listening right now are probably wrestling with it, thinking, if I disappear, won't they just move on? But ask yourself honestly, if your value depends entirely on being in their face, in their messages, in their life at all times, was it ever real value to begin with? Or was it just convenience for them? Sometimes the hardest truth to face is that your constant presence never made them cherish you. It made you predictable. Let me give you another picture. Think of the sun. It rises every morning. We know it will be there. We rarely pause to admire it, even though it gives life itself. Now imagine a solar eclipse. The sun disappears just for a moment. What happens then? People stop in their tracks. They grab cameras, climb rooftops, gather in crowds. Something extraordinary has happened, simply because the ordinary broke its pattern. Your absence works the same way. When you disappear, even briefly, you break the script they've written for you, and that shift creates urgency. But why is it so difficult to embrace this truth? Because disappearing feels like losing control. We've been conditioned to believe that silence means weakness, that stepping back means surrender. Yet the opposite is true. Silence is not the absence of power, it is the highest form of it. It unsettles, it provokes, it lingers. A scream fades, but silence echoes in the mind forever. Here's the lie people live under. If they don't see me, they'll forget me. No, my friends, if they always see you, they'll never value you. If they rarely see you, they'll never forget you. That's the paradox of presence. The more you give away your energy without pause, the less impact you have. But the moment you choose absence, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity, that's when your presence grows louder than ever. And let's be honest, they may act calm, they may post more, laugh more, pretend life is perfect without you. But silence works like water dripping on stone. Slowly, persistently, it eats away at the ego, because deep down they're asking themselves, why aren't they here? Did they finally get tired of me? Did I lose them? That's how obsession begins, not from noise, but from unanswered questions. So rise above the fear. Stop believing the lie that your worth depends on constant giving. Respect is not born in abundance, it is born in scarcity. Don't be the endless background music they ignore. Be the sudden silence that makes them stop and notice. Be the eclipse. Be the unexpected absence, because in that absence, your value becomes undeniable. Now, I want you to write this in the comments. I am not background. Say it, claim it, show it. You are not the wallpaper of anyone's life. You are the presence that changes everything when it's gone. Show yourself to the world and to yourself. Because once you understand the paradox of presence, you'll never give yourself away so cheaply again. Stay with me, because what comes next will take this even deeper. We'll explore why your silence doesn't just make them think of you, it makes them fear losing you. And that, my friends, is when the game truly changes. Number 2. Why disappearance creates obsession. Absence sharpens love, presence strengthens it. That ancient saying carries a weight people often ignore. Everyone wants to believe that the more you show up, the more they'll care. But the truth is harsher. When you are always there, your presence becomes background noise. When you disappear, suddenly your silence is the loudest sound they can hear. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Disappearance doesn't just create curiosity, it creates obsession. Think about a locked door. As long as it's open, anyone can walk through it, glance inside, and leave without thinking twice. But the moment it's shut and they can't get in, suddenly that door becomes the only thing on their mind. What's behind it? Why is it closed? Did I lose access forever? The same thing happens with people. When you're open, predictable, available, you're taken for granted. But when you close that door, quietly, calmly, without explanation, the mind of the one who used to walk in freely goes into overdrive. It starts small. Why haven't they texted? Why didn't they like my post? At first, they brush it off. Pride steps in. I don't need them. I'm fine. But the human mind has a strange flaw. It hates uncertainty more than it hates pain, and your absence creates a question mark they cannot erase. It forces them into a spiral of overthinking, replaying conversations, wondering if they pushed too hard, if they missed the signs, if you finally got tired of being the one who cared more. And here's the kicker. Obsession doesn't come when you're giving, explaining, chasing. Obsession is born from unanswered questions. Silence is the soil where obsession grows. Picture this. Imagine you're watching a series and it ends on a cliffhanger. The main character disappears into the night and the credits roll. What happens next? You can't stop thinking about it. You replay the scenes. You read between the lines. You stalk every trailer and rumor, waiting for answers. That's exactly how your disappearance works. You've become the unsolved story in their life, the one they can't close, the one their ego can't stand. But let's be real. Disappearing isn't easy. It goes against everything you've been taught. Society tells you if you want someone to care, show them more. If you want someone to stay, prove yourself. If you want someone to notice, wave louder. Yet the harder you try, the more invisible you become. It's like screaming in a stadium full of people. The noise is so overwhelming that no one hears you. But when you leave the stadium, when your seat is empty, that absence is noticed. And deep inside, they start to panic. They won't show it, of course. Their ego won't allow them to. They'll laugh louder, post more, act like your absence means nothing. But behind that mask, their thoughts are restless. They're scrolling, waiting, checking. They're creating theories, excuses, stories. Your silence has turned into their noise. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Silence embodies both truths. You are no longer feeding lies with explanations. You are no longer doing what is not right, wasting yourself where you are not valued. Instead, you're letting absence speak, and absence tells a story more powerful than any words. Now, let me break the lie for you. They don't miss you when you're around. They miss you when you're gone. The human mind doesn't value what it has. It obsesses over what it cannot control. That's why the more you disappear, the more their obsession grows. Let's bring this down to something simple. Imagine salt again. You don't notice it when it's there. It's just part of the meal. But take it away, and suddenly every bite tastes wrong. You crave it. You search for it. You miss it, even if you didn't notice it before. That's the psychology of disappearance. You weren't just there. You flavored their life in ways they didn't realize. Only absence reveals that. But why is it so powerful? Because the ego thrives on control. When they had you, when you were predictable, they felt secure. They knew you'd respond. They knew you'd explain. They knew you'd show up. But silence breaks that script. It pulls the rug out from under their pride, and without control, the ego doesn't rest. It obsesses. It plays loops. It replays moments. It creates ghosts of you in their mind. They might act like you're nothing, but their subconscious won't let go. Every song, every time they pass a place you once went together, every moment of quiet becomes haunted by you. And here's the beauty. You don't even have to try. You don't text. You don't explain. You don't send signals. The less you do, the louder your absence becomes. Now you may feel fear rising right here. That voice inside whispering, "But what if they don't think about me at all? What if they just move on?" Let me tell you the truth, my friends. People can move on from many things, but they never forget the one who left in silence. A fight, a scream, a dramatic ending. They can justify that, blame you, rewrite the story. But silence leaves no narrative. Silence leaves only mystery. And mystery lingers longer than any memory. And yes, it will be difficult, because disappearing requires strength. It requires you to sit in your own silence without reaching out, without giving in to your own need for closure. But what you must realize is this. Closure isn't given by them. It's created by you. Disappearance isn't about punishing them. It's about healing you. It's about reclaiming your peace, your self-respect, your energy. They may not admit it, but your absence is teaching them more than your presence ever could. It is showing them the weight of what they lost. It is forcing them to sit with themselves, to face the echo of your silence. And the deeper the silence grows, the sharper the obsession becomes. So rise above the lies. Stop thinking you need to chase to be remembered. Stop believing you need to explain to be understood. You don't. You need to disappear to be valued. You need to let silence do what noise never could. Say this with me right now. My silence creates impact. Write it in the comments. Claim it. Let the world see that you understand the truth, that you don't need noise to matter. You don't need to fight for a place in anyone's mind. Your absence already does the work for you. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that disappearing isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's strength. It's Stoicism in action. And stay with me, my friends, because what comes next will reveal the deeper truth. Why silence doesn't just create obsession, but why it also triggers the collapse of the very ego that once ignored you. Number 3. Silent power versus loud desperation. Noise demands attention, silence commands it. My friends, let me tell you something that will sting a little. The loudest people are rarely the most respected. Desperation is noisy, power is quiet. And the moment you realize that, your entire life changes. Because most people think the more they speak, the more they justify, the more they argue, the more they'll be heard. But the truth is, the more you try to be heard, the more invisible you become. Silence is where real presence lives. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're at a crowded party, music blasting, people shouting, laughter bouncing off the walls. In the middle of it all, one person starts yelling over the noise to make a point. Do you listen? Not really. They just become another layer of sound in the chaos. But then, suddenly, the music cuts. The room goes silent. Everyone turns, waiting, listening, searching. That's what silence does. It interrupts patterns. It breaks through the noise. It commands attention without having to demand it. Now think about relationships. How many times have you been the loud one? Explaining yourself, writing long texts, pleading to be understood, chasing answers. And what happened? The more you said, the less they heard. The more you begged, the less they cared. That's loud desperation, my friends. And nothing kills respect faster, because desperation smells. You can't hide it. And when people sense it, they don't feel grateful. They feel repelled. Here's the lie, that if you just explain harder, if you argue better, if you shout louder, they'll finally understand your worth. Wrong. All that happens is you drain yourself while they watch. Arms crossed, ego intact. You're playing their game, on their field, by their rules. And that's why you lose. Now contrast that with silence. When you stop explaining, when you stop proving, when you stop showing up to defend yourself. Suddenly, the power shifts. Because silence doesn't argue, it unsettles. It doesn't defend, it exposes. It doesn't chase. It forces the other person to sit with themselves. And trust me, that's scarier than anything you could ever say. It's like looking in a mirror. If you argue with them, they get to focus on your words. But if you go silent, the mirror flips. Now they're left staring at themselves, at their own actions, their own guilt, their own insecurities. That's why silence is terrifying to people who mistreated you. It holds them accountable without you lifting a finger. Let's go deeper. Why is it so hard to stay silent? Because silence feels like losing. It feels like surrender. We're wired to believe if we're not fighting, we're failing. But ask yourself, what's stronger? The boxer who throws wild punches, flailing, desperate, hoping to land a blow, or the fighter who steps back, calm, patient, letting the opponent wear themselves out? The calm one always wins, and that's silence. It's not surrender, it's strategy. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." If they expect you to argue, to fight, to explain, don't. If they expect drama, give them peace. If they expect begging, give them absence. That difference is what shakes them, because you're breaking the script. And when the script is broken, the ego panics. But I know what you're thinking. If I stay silent, won't they just think I don't care? Won't they forget me? My friends, silence doesn't erase you. It engraves you. The less you say, the more they think. The less you show, the more they imagine. And the imagination is far more powerful than reality. When you speak, they can dismiss your words. When you're silent, they have no closure. They're left replaying, rethinking, regretting. Silence forces them to write the story themselves, and they always write it with more fear and longing than the truth ever held. Think about music. A powerful song isn't just made of sound, it's made of pauses, the rests, the silence between notes, are what create rhythm and depth. Without silence, it's just noise. Your life, your presence, works the same way. Without moments of disappearance, of pulling back, of going quiet, your presence loses depth. It becomes noise. But when you withdraw, when you let silence sit between the notes, that's when your presence hits harder than ever. And let me tell you a secret. People notice silence more than they notice noise. If you're always talking, always explaining, they tune you out. But when you go quiet, the mind kicks in. What happened? Did I push too far? Why aren't they saying anything? The questions pile up, and questions turn into obsession. Now, this doesn't mean silence is easy. No! It takes more strength to say nothing than to say everything. It takes courage to walk away without defending yourself. But that's what makes it powerful, because anyone can scream, anyone can argue, few can stand in silence, calm, unshaken, untouchable. That's why it's remembered. So let's break it down. Loud desperation, texting paragraphs, begging for answers, arguing to be understood. Silent power, saying nothing, walking away, letting absence speak. Which one leaves a mark? The first drains you and makes you forgettable. The second unsettles them and makes you unforgettable. Let's use a metaphor. Imagine a fire. If you throw wood on it constantly, it burns predictably. But if you suddenly stop feeding it, the flames flicker. Panic rises. What happened? Where's the fuel? The silence of no longer feeding someone's ego works the same way. You stop giving energy, and suddenly they feel the void. That void burns louder than any word you could ever speak. And here's something crucial. You're not silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because you've said enough. Because you finally understand that your energy is too valuable to waste on ears that don't want to hear. Silence isn't emptiness, it's fullness. It's the fullness of peace, of self-control, of knowing you no longer need to prove your worth. So remember this: noise is desperate, silence is dignified, noise is forgotten, silence is remembered. The ones who scream for attention fade into the background. The ones who disappear quietly become legends in someone's mind. That's why silence is power. It commands without asking. Now, I want you to affirm this truth with me. Say it out loud. Write it in the comments. My silence commands respect. Let the world see it. Let yourself see it. Because when you embrace silence, you're not losing. You're rising. You're stepping into a kind of strength most people never find. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you don't need to be loud to matter. You don't need to fight to be heard. You only need to stand in silence, firm, calm, and unshaken. That's what they'll remember. That's what will echo. And stay with me, my friends, because next we're going to dive even deeper into what happens inside them when your silence grows, into the collapse of their ego, and why your absence becomes the one thing they can't escape. Number 4, the ego's collapse. Pride is concerned with who is right. Ego is concerned with who is in control. My friends, never forget that the people who once ignored you, who once took you for granted, live and breathe on control. They feel powerful not because they are truly strong, but because they believe they can predict you. They know when you'll call. They know how fast you'll respond. They know what excuse you'll make, how you'll explain, how you'll show up no matter what. That's the ego's fuel, certainty. But the moment you vanish, the moment you go silent, the moment you stop feeding that cycle, something dangerous happens. Their ego begins to collapse. It doesn't collapse all at once. No, it crumbles slowly, like a tower with cracks hidden beneath the surface. From the outside, they'll act as if nothing has changed. They'll still smile for pictures, post their outings, laugh louder than usual. To the world, they'll look untouched, stronger than ever. But inside, the cracks are spreading. The silence you've left behind is eating away at the foundation of their control. Because ego hates one thing above all else: uncertainty, and silence is the birthplace of uncertainty. Picture a gambler at a casino. As long as the cards are being dealt, they feel alive, in control, even if they're losing. But if the dealer suddenly stops, if the game ends with no explanation, that gambler loses their mind. Why? Because it's not about the winning or losing. It's about the game continuing. Your presence was their game, your predictability was their casino, and your silence. That's the dealer walking away mid-hand. Suddenly they're left staring at their cards, unfinished, unsettled, powerless. And don't be fooled by the mask they wear. Ego is a master actor. They'll try to convince you and themselves that your absence means nothing, that they're fine, that they're thriving. But watch closely. Watch the timing of their posts, the way they mirror your old patterns, the way they linger where you once gave attention. These are the cracks, the signs of collapse, because when control slips away, ego panics. Here's what happens step by step. At first, they laugh it off. They'll be back. They always come back. That's the pride talking, pretending to be calm. But as days pass, the script doesn't play out the way they expected. Your silence grows. No calls, no texts, no reaction to their little attempts to provoke you. The pride starts to falter. Doubt creeps in. Why haven't they reached out? Did I misjudge them? Did they move on? And when doubt enters, ego begins to weaken. Then comes the second stage, overcompensation. They start posting more, going out more, showing off their so-called happiness. It looks like confidence, but it's not. It's panic dressed up as power. It's like a sinking ship blasting music louder so no one notices the water rushing in. Every laugh, every filtered photo, every "I'm fine without you" performance is just noise to cover the quiet ache your silence created. And the more they try to prove they don't care, the more obvious it becomes that they do, because if they truly didn't care, they wouldn't need to prove it. That's the ego collapsing in disguise, trying to patch itself with validation, with distraction, with anything that fills the hole left by your disappearance. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But people ruled by ego live the opposite way. They crave power over others because they have no power over themselves. That's why your silence is unbearable to them. It's the one thing they can't control, the one event they can't manipulate, the one reaction they can't predict. And when that control is gone, the collapse begins. Let's use another metaphor. Think of a castle made of sand. It looks grand, impressive, towering on the shore. But the moment the tide rises, that castle cannot stand. Ego is the sandcastle. It looks powerful, but it's fragile, built on pride, not substance. Your silence is the tide. Slowly, steadily, it washes away the foundation, grain by grain, until the castle caves in. They may try to build it up again with distractions and fake displays of strength, but the water keeps coming, and the tide doesn't argue, it doesn't announce, it just rises. And here's the most painful truth for them. Your silence forces them to face themselves. When you were always present, always responding, always explaining, they never had to look inward. They could project everything onto you. Their mistakes were your fault. Their moods were your responsibility. Their control was never questioned. But when you go silent, when you step away, the mirror appears. Now they're left with no one to blame, no one to absorb their chaos, no one to validate their pride. And that mirror is unbearable for the ego. They'll try to fight it. They'll tell themselves stories. They're probably busy. They're just playing games. They'll come back when they realize they need me. But every day that passes with no sign of you, the story falls apart. And when the story collapses, the ego follows. That's why your absence hurts more than any fight. Because it's not just about missing you. It's about losing the illusion of control. But my friends, I know what you're asking yourself. Why does it matter if their ego collapses? What does that do for me? Here's the answer. It shows you the power you never thought you had. You don't need to argue to prove a point. You don't need to chase to earn respect. You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to walk away with peace and watch how the very ego that mocked you begins to crumble under the weight of your silence. And yes, it will be difficult, because the temptation is strong. You'll want to break the silence, to peek back in, to see how they're reacting. But remember, your strength is not in what you say. It's in what you don't say. It's in the space you leave, in the control you take back for yourself. They may collapse, but you rise, because silence isn't just their defeat, it's your freedom. So here's your affirmation today. My silence breaks egos. Write it in the comments. Own it. Let it remind you that you don't need to fight battles that don't deserve you. You don't need to prove your worth to people who only saw it when it was gone. You only need to stand in your own peace and let the collapse take care of itself. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that silence is not emptiness. It is strength, it is clarity, it is your shield. And stay with me, because what comes next is even more powerful. We're going to uncover how to use your silence not just to collapse their ego, but to create a new version of yourself, calm, selective, unshakable, that no one will ever take for granted again. Number 5, the strategy of selective absence. Discipline is remembering what you want. My friends, let's talk about the kind of absence that heals you, strengthens you, and unsettles them at the same time. Not ghosting, not immaturity, not childish games of blocking and unblocking. I'm talking about selective absence, the art of stepping back with intention, withdrawing your energy not out of anger, but out of clarity. Because the truth is, absence without purpose is just avoidance. But absence with wisdom, that's strategy, that's Stoicism in motion. Let me paint you a scene. Imagine you're pouring water into a cracked glass. No matter how much you give, the water keeps leaking out. At first, you pour faster, thinking, if I just keep giving, maybe it will finally be enough. But no matter what you do, the glass never fills. That's what constant presence looks like, giving endlessly to people who cannot hold your value. Selective absence is when you finally put the glass down. You don't smash it. You don't scream at it. You simply stop pouring. And in that moment, you take back your power. Here's the lie most people live by. If I leave, they'll think I don't care. If I stop giving, they'll forget me. No, my friends, selective absence doesn't erase you, it magnifies you. When you stop feeding what drains you, your energy stops leaking away, and instead of chasing after people who barely noticed you, you become a presence that's impossible to ignore, because nothing is louder than someone who used to give everything suddenly giving nothing. Now, let's be clear. Selective absence is not punishment. It's not revenge. Revenge is still about them. Punishment is still about control. Selective absence is about you. It's emotional justice. It's choosing peace over noise. It's saying, I will not keep showing up where I am not valued. I will not keep explaining myself to ears that don't listen. I will not keep offering love to hands that let it slip through their fingers. That's not cruelty. It's wisdom. But here's why it's difficult, because your fear will fight you. That voice in your head will whisper, what if they don't notice? What if they move on? What if my silence means I've lost? And this is where you must rise above the lies. If your value depends entirely on chasing, proving, explaining, was it ever real value? Or was it just convenience for them? Selective absence forces the truth out into the open. If they never cared, your silence reveals it. If they did care, your silence magnifies it. Either way, you win, because you stop wasting yourself on uncertainty. Let me give you a metaphor. Think of fire. If you keep feeding it wood, it burns steadily. But if you suddenly stop, the fire flickers, grows weaker, and panics for fuel. Your attention, your presence, your energy, they were the fuel. And when you pull back, the fire inside them grows restless. That's not manipulation, that's psychology. People crave what's no longer guaranteed. Selective absence makes your presence scarce, and scarcity creates value. Now, I know some of you are thinking, so do I just disappear completely? Do I cut everyone off? Not at all. That's not strategy, that's immaturity. Selective absence means you stop pouring into the wrong places. It means you decide where your energy goes and where it doesn't. You don't block them to provoke a reaction. That's a game. You don't delete them to prove you've moved on. That's noise. You don't complain about their silence while practicing your own. That's hypocrisy. You simply withdraw, calmly, silently, without warning. You let absence do what noise never could. And here's where the power comes in. When you step back with clarity, you create a void. That void unsettles them. It makes them wonder, why now? Why not me? What changed? And that wondering turns into searching. That searching turns into obsession, because the ego hates unanswered questions, and selective absence provides nothing but unanswered questions. Let's go deeper. Selective absence is not weakness, it's mastery. It means you finally understood that not everyone deserves access to you. It means you've grown past the need to always be seen, always be heard, always be understood. You don't need their validation anymore. You've created your own. That's what separates Stoic silence from immature withdrawal. It's rooted not in pain, but in peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." My friends, living doesn't mean clinging. Living doesn't mean explaining. Living means choosing where your soul can breathe and walking away from where it can't. Selective absence is you finally beginning to live. For yourself, not for their approval. But let's be honest. They will try to interpret your silence. They'll think it's a game. They'll tell themselves you're trying to manipulate them. They'll pretend you're just being dramatic. But deep down, they'll know it's different this time. Because selective absence doesn't come with hints, with posts, with indirect messages. It comes with peace. And peace, my friends, is terrifying to people who built power over your chaos. And here's the beauty. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to say, "I'm done." You don't need to slam doors. You just step back and let the silence carry the weight. Because absence doesn't scream, it whispers. And that whisper echoes louder than any argument. So why is this strategy so powerful? Because it flips the script. They expect you to react. You don't. They expect you to chase. You don't. They expect you to justify. You don't. And when their expectations collapse, so does their ego. That's when they start to see what they ignored. That's when they start to feel what they denied. And that's when they start to realize your absence is heavier than your presence ever was. Let me give you one more metaphor. Imagine a song that plays in the background every day. At first, you hum along, but eventually you stop noticing it. Then one day it stops playing, and in the silence, you realize how much of your life was shaped by that song. You start searching for it, missing it, longing for it. That's what selective absence does. You stop being background noise. You become the silence they can't escape. Now I want you to remember this truth. Absence is not about punishing them. It's about protecting you. It's about making sure you never again become invisible by being too available. It's about choosing yourself first. And when you choose yourself, you no longer need to be chosen by them. That's freedom. That's respect. That's Stoicism. So write this in the comments right now. I choose where my energy goes. Let it be your affirmation. Show yourself. Show the world around you. Because the moment you embrace selective absence, you stop living as someone else's option and start living as your own priority. Stay with me, my friends, because next we'll dive into the heart of unpredictability, how breaking the script not only unsettles them, but makes you unforgettable. And trust me, that's where the real storm begins. Number 6, becoming unpredictable. Respect is born when you can walk away without notice. My friends, let's dig into one of the most unsettling truths about human nature. People crave predictability until it bores them, and they fear unpredictability because it reminds them they can lose what they thought was guaranteed. Predictability makes you safe, yes, but it also makes you invisible. Unpredictability makes you dangerous, mysterious, unforgettable. And when you step into this kind of energy, you don't just shake their comfort, you rewrite the entire script they've written for you. Think about it. For so long they knew you like the back of their hand. They could predict your every move. They knew you would respond within minutes, maybe seconds. They knew that if they pulled away, you'd chase. If they made a snide remark, you'd defend yourself. If they ignored you, you'd double your effort to be seen. That predictability gave them a false sense of power. They believed they owned the rhythm of your emotions, like a musician who thought they could control the instrument forever. But what happens when the instrument suddenly stops playing the tune they're used to? Confusion, fear, obsession. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine you're watching your favorite TV show. Every week you know what's coming. The character cracks the same jokes. The plot unfolds in the same predictable pattern, and while it's comfortable, it's also forgettable. But then one week, everything shifts. The character does something shocking, completely out of character. Suddenly, you're hooked again. You lean in closer, wondering, what's next? What else have I missed? That's what happens when you break their script. You go from predictable to unforgettable. But here's the lie you've been living under. If I'm consistent, they'll value me. If I'm predictable, they'll respect me. Wrong. Consistency is important when it comes to your character, your integrity, your values, your respect for yourself. But predictability in how you deal with them, that's poison. Predictability makes them lazy, entitled, blind to your worth. They stop wondering, stop fearing, stop valuing, because they think they already know the end of the story. And people rarely cherish what they think they've figured out. This is why unpredictability is so powerful. It reintroduces mystery. It forces them to step out of autopilot. It plants a seed of doubt in their mind. Do I really know them? Are they really mine? Did I misjudge their strength? That seed grows into insecurity, and insecurity, when it comes to someone who thought they had control, is unbearable. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change." The truth is, your silence, your unpredictability, is what shows them they were wrong about you. And while they might not happily change, they will notice. They will feel it in their core, because nothing forces reflection like a broken pattern. Let me bring this home with another metaphor. Imagine a dog that barks every time the doorbell rings. Over time, you expect it. You stop noticing. It's background noise. But one day, the doorbell rings, and silence. No bark. Suddenly, you freeze. Something feels off, something is different, and that difference consumes your thoughts. That's what happens when you stop reacting the way they expect. Your absence, your silence, your calm. It unsettles them more than any outburst ever could. And here's where the fear begins, because unpredictability means they no longer control the story. Before, they could pull the strings. Now the strings are gone. Before, they could rely on your reactions. Now, you've stepped out of the script, and when they don't know what's coming, their imagination fills the blanks. Are they done with me? Have they found someone else? Do they not care anymore? That uncertainty breeds fear, and fear, my friends, is where respect is born. Now let's be clear, unpredictability doesn't mean playing games. It doesn't mean acting hot and cold just to provoke them. That's immaturity. Real unpredictability is rooted in your peace. It's the power to decide where your energy goes and to act from clarity, not from reaction. It's not about confusing them for fun. It's about refusing to be controlled. It's about reminding them that your life no longer revolves around their approval. And yes, it's difficult, because you've been conditioned to believe that being reliable to them will make them love you. But reliability without boundaries isn't love. It's slavery. It's chaining yourself to someone else's comfort while abandoning your own power. Breaking that chain takes courage. It takes silence when you want to speak. It takes walking away when you want to stay. It takes patience when you want to prove your point. But that's the path to becoming unforgettable. And watch how it shifts. At first, they'll shrug. They'll be back. This is just a phase. But then time passes. No reaction, no desperate messages, no predictable behavior. And suddenly, doubt creeps in. Their ego whispers, "What if this time is different? What if I've really lost them?" That doubt becomes insecurity. Insecurity becomes obsession. And obsession, my friends, is born not from your words, but from your unpredictability. Let's not sugarcoat it. Unpredictability scares people. Why? Because it removes the safety net of control. It forces them to face the possibility that you don't need them anymore. And nothing is more terrifying to someone who once underestimated you than realizing you are no longer predictable. So rise above the lies. Stop believing that predictability earns love. It doesn't. Predictability earns entitlement. Mystery earns respect. Absence earns attention. Silence earns obsession. When you break the script, you break their hold over you. Here's the affirmation I want you to hold on to today. I am not predictable. I am powerful. Write it in the comments. Say it out loud. Show the world around you that you refuse to be anyone's background noise. You are the storm that arrives without warning, the silence that unsettles, the presence that cannot be controlled. My friends, when you embrace unpredictability, you don't just change how they see you, you change how you see yourself. You stop living in their shadow. You stop dancing to their rhythm. You reclaim your own power. And that's when the game shifts forever. Stay with me, because what comes next will go even deeper. We'll uncover how this unpredictability doesn't just shake them, but how it turns into fear. The kind of fear that reveals they never had control in the first place, and that's when your silence becomes their nightmare. Number 7, from absence to fear. The fear of loss is greater than the joy of gain. My friends, never underestimate this truth. When you disappear, when you pull back your presence, when you stop being predictable, you are no longer just gone. You have become a fear, and nothing shakes the human mind more than fear. The fear of losing control, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of being replaced. This is the hidden power of absence. At first, it unsettles, but as time passes, that unease grows into panic, and panic always exposes what pride tried to hide. Think about this. When you were always present, they felt comfortable. They thought they had you figured out, like a book they'd read too many times. They could skip pages and still know the ending. But when you closed that book and walked away, their confidence crumbled. Now every page feels blank. Every chapter is a mystery. And here's the thing about the human mind. It hates mysteries it can't solve. So what do? They obsess. They imagine. They fear. At first, it's pride that speaks for them. They'll come back. They always do. Pride is arrogant. Pride is blind. Pride loves control. But silence has a way of testing pride. And when days turn into weeks, that pride begins to tremble. Suddenly, their thoughts shift. Why haven't they called? Why didn't they respond? Did I push them too far? Did I lose them for good? The fear begins to rise. And fear, my friends, is more powerful than any love they claim to have. because love can be denied, fear cannot. Here's the lie they want you to believe. If I disappear, they won't notice. That's what fear tells you to keep you stuck. But let's flip that. People don't notice what's always guaranteed. They notice when what was guaranteed is gone. Imagine walking into your house and finding the lights won't turn on. Yesterday, they worked fine. Today, nothing. Do you shrug it off? No, you panic. You check the wires, the switches, the fuse box. You tear the place apart trying to understand. That's what your absence does. It cuts off the light they were used to, and in that darkness, fear grows. But why does absence trigger such fear? Because it breaks the script of control. Ego thrives on knowing your every move. They felt secure in the fact that if they pushed, you'd pull. If they ignored, you'd chase. If they hurt you, you'd prove your loyalty anyway. That control fed their pride. But silence steals their script. Suddenly, they don't know the ending. Suddenly, the lines they rehearsed don't matter. And without control, ego collapses into fear. Picture a chess player who's used to winning the same way every game. They know your moves, your patterns, your weaknesses. Then one day, you stop playing their game. You don't move the way they expect. You don't react the way they counted on. What happens? They panic. They slam the table. They try to read your face, your silence, anything that gives away your next move. That's what unpredictability and absence do. They turn confidence into fear. And here's the irony. They might post more, laugh louder, surround themselves with people, act like your absence doesn't matter. But the louder they get on the outside, the more noise they're trying to silence on the inside. It's like someone whistling in the dark. They don't whistle because they're happy. They whistle because they're afraid of what's lurking in the silence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Your silence is not painful because of what it is. It's painful because of what their ego estimates it to be. Maybe they think you've moved on. Maybe they imagine you've grown stronger. Maybe they fear you've found someone else. The truth doesn't matter. Their fear fills in the blanks. And fear always paints the worst possible picture. This is why your absence becomes their nightmare. They don't fear your silence itself. They fear what it represents. It represents change. It represents freedom. It represents the end of their control. And that's what terrifies them. Because if they no longer control you, they no longer know who they are with you. Let me give you another metaphor. Imagine a shadow that always followed you, day after day. You never noticed it because it was always there. But one night, you wake up and it's gone. At first, you feel free. But then fear creeps in. Where did it go? Why is it gone? What if I never see it again? That's how absence shifts into fear. They never valued you when you were always there. But when you vanish, their own mind haunts them with questions they can't answer. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to lift a finger. Fear doesn't need your effort. It doesn't need your words. It doesn't need your presence. Your silence does all the work. Because silence doesn't explain, it unsettles. Silence doesn't argue, it echoes. Silence doesn't confirm, it forces the imagination to spiral out of control. And that spiral always ends in fear. But let me be honest, it's not easy for you, because your own fear will whisper, what if they don't care at all? What if my silence means nothing? And this is where you must remember, their fear is hidden. They won't admit it. They won't text it. They won't post it. But it's there. It shows up in the timing of their actions, in the indirect ways they try to reach you, in the little cracks in their fake happiness. Fear leaves fingerprints, even if pride tries to wipe them away. So here's what you must hold on to. Absence doesn't just make them miss you. It makes them fear losing you forever. And that fear is not your enemy. It's your proof. Proof that silence is stronger than begging. Proof that absence is louder than words. Proof that you don't need to fight for respect. It's given when you show you can walk away. My friends, I want you to affirm this with me. My absence creates fear. Write it in the comments. Own it. Show yourself. Show the world that you've embraced this truth. Because once you understand the shift from absence to fear, you will never again give yourself away cheaply. You'll never again beg to be seen. You'll never again let predictability steal your power. And stay with me, because what comes next will take us even deeper. We're going to explore how this fear doesn't just make them miss you, it begins to transform you. How in silence, in absence, in unpredictability, you find something greater than their fear. You find yourself. And that discovery, my friends, is where the real power begins. Number 8. The rebirth in silence. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. That's Marcus Aurelius, my friends. And if you've been listening closely, you know this truth hits harder than most. Because when you disappear, when you step back into silence, when you stop explaining yourself to those who never listened, something extraordinary begins. At first, yes, your silence shakes them. It triggers their ego, their fear, their panic. But then something even more powerful happens. It transforms you. This is where rebirth begins, not loud, not flashy, not for the world to see, but quietly, within you. Imagine a forest after a wildfire. At first it looks destroyed, blackened trees, silence, emptiness. But look closer. Underneath the ash, new life is forming. Tiny green shoots push through the soil. Fresh growth begins where the flames once raged. That's what silence does for you. It feels empty at first, painful even, but with time it becomes fertile ground. New strength rises, new clarity takes root. What you thought was an ending is actually the start of your rebirth. Let's be honest, silence isn't easy. In the beginning, it feels unbearable. You're tempted to break it, to send that message, to peek at their profile, to explain yourself one more time. But each time you resist, you get stronger. Each day you choose silence over reaction. You prove something to yourself, that your peace matters more than their attention. And that's when you start to shift. That's when you stop being the person who begged to be seen and start becoming the person who doesn't need to beg at all. And this is where the true beauty of selective absence shows itself. Because while they're wrestling with fear and uncertainty, you're discovering freedom. You're realizing that your worth never depended on their approval. You're learning to breathe without needing their validation. You're finding joy in your own company. My friends, that's rebirth, when silence stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like peace. Let me give you a picture. Think of a musician who once played in a noisy bar every night, fighting to be heard over the chaos. They thought they needed the crowd's attention to feel alive. But then one night, they play alone, in a quiet room, just for themselves. And suddenly, the music sounds clearer, purer, more powerful than ever. That's what happens when you reclaim your silence. You stop performing for others. You start living for yourself. And here's where the lie gets shattered. The world told you, if you're quiet, you'll be forgotten. If you disappear, you'll be replaced. But the truth is the opposite. In silence, you're not forgotten. You're remembered louder. You're not replaced. You become irreplaceable. Because your absence, your calm, your refusal to play the old game creates a weight they can't shake off. And while they wrestle with that, you rise into a version of yourself they never imagined. But let's not just focus on them. This part is about you. Your silence is not only shaking their ego, it's shaping your soul. You start to enjoy mornings without checking your phone. You start to walk without rushing to be noticed. You start to live in the present, tasting your coffee, reading that book, breathing deeper than before. These are small things, yes, but they're sacred, because for the first time in a long time, you're living for yourself. And here's the paradox. Your rebirth in silence makes you more powerful than you ever were in noise. When you stop begging, people notice. When you stop chasing, people respect. When you stop trying to be seen, people can't stop looking. Why? Because you've become rare. And what is rare becomes valuable. Marcus Aurelius also said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." How much time have you wasted begging to be understood by people who chose not to understand you? How much energy have you poured into proving yourself to someone who never truly valued you? Enough. The rebirth in silence is your answer to all of that wasted time. You stop wasting. You start living. You start building yourself instead of trying to fix someone else's opinion of you. Now let me ask you, isn't it better to be feared for your silence than pitied for your desperation? Isn't it better to be respected for your absence than ignored for your presence? Isn't it better to walk in peace than to live in constant noise? That's the shift. That's the rebirth. You go from chasing to choosing, from begging to building, from being background to being unforgettable. And yes, they'll feel it. They'll feel your silence long after you've moved on. They'll remember you not for your arguments, not for your explanations, but for the way you walked away with calm dignity. That memory will haunt them. But for you, that same silence becomes your shield, your comfort, your rebirth. So let's seal this moment together. Say this with me. My silence is my rebirth. Write it in the comments. Show the world. Show yourself that you've chosen this path, that you've decided to rise in peace, to rebuild in silence, to reclaim your power. Because once you embrace this, you'll never give your worth away again. And if this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of the strength that's already within you, then hit that like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. Stay with me, because this journey doesn't end here. Every step we take in silence is a step closer to the life we deserve, stronger, calmer, freer. So remember, my friends, silence isn't the end, it's the beginning. The rebirth in silence is your transformation. And from here on out, the world won't just see you, they'll feel you, they'll remember you, they'll respect you, and you'll finally be free.